That ahankare matahoya, maddened by pride, right? Maddened by the false ego. Nitai pada pasadiya. I'm forgetting the lotus feet of Nitai. And asatyera satya korimani. And what is asatya? What is untruth? I'm accepting as truth. Right? This is our whole disease, moment by moment. This is Maya. This is one, Gurudev gave this one explanation of Maya. What is Maya? What is not? That is Maya. What is not? And he gave that analogy once of how actually the way that we perceive light rays is upside down, right? And the brain corrects it, right? And Gurudev spoke about that. Like there are some clues, right, in nature, how everything we're seeing is distorted, right? What is not? And maddened by the false ego, intoxicated, deluded by the false ego, the false conception of life, then we're seeing everything upside down, inside out. So, always relevant, right? So we reached verse 16. We've been hearing about the creation, right? So, Omayana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshornilitanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Verse 16 of Sri Brahma Samhita. Ahankaratmakam Vishvam Tasmad Etad Vyajayata. Translation: this world of mundane ego has been born of Shambhu, right, Shiva. This is Shambhu's function in relationship with the jivas. So Shambhu, right, this is referring to that lower aspect of Shiva, right, who's in connection with the mundane plane, not the higher Sada Shiva, devotee Bhakta Shiva aspect, right? This lower aspect of Shiva. This world of mundane ego has been born of Shambhu. Purport: the most original, unadulterated entity is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the all-truth, free from any conception of separate egotism. The separate masculine, organic egoism, that is, the separate symbolic existence that appears in the mundane world, is only an illusory reflection of that pure existence. And represented by the original Shambhu, that existence unites with the distorted representation of Rama Devi, the Mayic or mundane female womb receptacle principle. At that point, Shambhu is represented as the efficient cause only in terms of elementary matter. Again, when in the course of evolution, all the universes are manifest, the evolved conception of Rudra also appears within the entity of Shambhu, who is, as previously explained, born from the brow of Mahavishnu. However, the entity of Shambhu is constitutionally egoistic, ahankaratmaka, in all circumstances. When the endless jivas, who are sparks of chit, or transcendental consciousness, emanating from the chit rays, consciousness, right? Transcendental consciousness, emanating from the chit rays of the Paramatman, identify themselves in the pure ego of exclusive servitors of the Supreme Lord, their relationship with the Mayic world no longer endures. They become members of the Vaikuntha world. When they forget that ego and want to become enjoyers of Maya, the egoistic principle of Shambhu enters their existence and gives them the frame of reference of being separate enjoyers. Thus, Shambhu is the basic truth underlying the egoistic world and the mundane bodily ego of the jivas. This is very, very deep explanation being given here. It's a subtle, very esoteric point. It's a little difficult to grasp. And there's recently it was Shiva Ratri, right? The appearance of Lord Shiva, this festival. We were in Navadvip in India at the time. And there's a talk of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he's discussing this point. And as I said, it's a difficult point to grasp, but we know Shambhu, we know Shiva, right, as a particular entity, particular being. But this Shambhu, the Shiva, also represents a particular stage of consciousness of the Jiva soul, of the living entity, where they're in that mood of a separate enjoyer. This is so Jiva, Shiva can also, that term, it can be used, Shiva can also be used as a term describing the Jiva in this stage of consciousness, and so this principle of Shambhu, of Shiva, is at the back of that stage of consciousness, where there's still this spirit of independence. And in particular, Srila Sridhar Maharaj discusses in this talk how in that place, in that stage of consciousness, the Jiva they may be liberated from Maya, right? They may not be directly under the influence of the material energy, but they're maintaining some position of mastership over Maya. So they're not directly under the influence of Maya, but they have some position of mastership over Maya. So they're still within the relativity of Maya. And so it's still ultimately an undesirable and unclean position, because they're not fully entering that flow of dedication, surrender, service. And we also hear this mentioned, right, from our gurus, that this is the final test of the Jiva soul, right? They're becoming free from the influence of Maya. And then Maya Devi comes to them and says, oh, well, I can serve you. How about that? I will serve you. Like, oh, hang on, this is an interesting proposal. I'll be free from Maya and she'll serve me as a maidservant. Oh, very interesting. It's very attractive. So we also hear that sometimes, right? That this is the final test of the Jiva when they're on the way out, So they're free from Maya on one level, but they're still within the relativity of Maya. They're assuming this independent position, not entering the universal flow of divine service, and embracing our actual position as loving servants of the divinity of the Lord Shri Krishna. So it's a very interesting point. When they forget that, and then this point here is also very deep, right? That ultimately ego is not a bad thing. There's a pure ego. There's a pure and clean ego of being loving servants of the Lord. So when they embrace that identity, that ego, then they're fully free from Maya. But when they forget that ego, when they forget that pure ego and want to enjoy Maya, then the egoistic principle of Shambhu. So this is one way of discussing this Shiva, the Shambhu, is a principle, right? That is within the souls who are existing as independent entities outside of the direct flow of service to Krishna. So then this last line is kind of underscoring everything. Thus, Shambhu is the basic truth underlying the egoistic world and the mundane bodily ego of the jivas. And Gurudev, he made this interesting point once, how Shiva, I'm trying to remember the exact phrase he used, but saying that Shiva is like under he has some connection with he said Sankarshan, right? Sankarshan means Baladev, Balaram. And Balaram, he described him as a disciple. Use that word, I believe. She was a disciple. And we also hear how Baladev, he also has this role as he's connected with the willing potency, right? And he's known as the maintainer, the support. And Srila Maharaj gives this explanation of both the mundane world and the spiritual world, right? And remember, Sankarshan Baladev is Ananta Shesh, is the support of the whole mundane existence, right? At the bottom of the whole of the mundane existence, giving the support, right? At the foundation. And so Srila Maharaj also mentions, and I believe it's in his Dwadashakam prayers to Nityananda, how Nityananda is the support of the ego, right? And so we see there also this connection with Shiva. So there's the maintainer of the ego, and that has two expressions, right? There's the spiritual ego and there's the mundane ego. And so we are praying to Nityananda, right? To give us that pure spiritual ego, servitors of Shri Krishna. So ahankare mata hoya, right? In that false ego, we're forgetting the grace, forgetting who is Nitai. But Nitaya Karuna Habe, Braje Radha Krishna Pabe. When we receive the grace of Nitai, and we can embrace that spiritual ego, then we can have entrance to that higher plane of divine service. Nitayer Charana Satya Tahara Sevakane, Nitai Para. The lotus feet of Nitai, they are truth. You have a question?
Yeah, sorry to take it a few steps back, but what exactly? I didn't really follow with the last lesson that the jiva comes contact with. Like, I didn't really follow that. Like, how can Maya say like, oh, like I can serve you? Like I don't follow that.
Because when Maya Devi, Durga, right? One form of Maya Devi is Durga, right? The consort of Shiva, Shambhu, Rudra, right? And they're like the master and the mistress of the mundane plane. And so the word Durga, there's two Durgas. There's Durga with a short A and there's Durga with a long A. And one is referring to the person and the other means a prison. So Durga is the warden of the Durga. She's the prison warden, right? So her job is to take care of the prisoners. And so if she sees that she's losing control of someone's like becoming free of the prison, then there's like a final test. Are you really eligible? So she's going to make some temptation, some distraction.
Right.
Like, are you really, it's quality control. Like, are you really ready to be released? Like sometimes police, there's like a special name for it, right? They have these special operations. They're trying to like find the drug dealer or something. So they'll plant someone and they'll like pretend they want to do a drug deal or something, right? And they'll like approach someone like, hey, can you tell me where I can get the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But really, they're just trying to find out like who's guilty here, right? So Maya can be like that, like try and find some way to hook them back in. So it's like that. Okay. So someone's like, oh yeah, I'm on the way out. And she's like, are you really? Like, hey, one last test for you. Right. And then in that stage, and this is where like you'll find like there are particular ascetics, like yogis, like who they attain these siddhis, these spiritual perfections, we translate it as these like mystic powers, right? Where they're not exactly under the control of the mundane energy, right? They're not being influenced by lust, anger, greed, and so on, right? But they're manipulating the material energy, right? And they have special powers, like they can They can fly, they can walk on water, they can become lighter than a feather or whatever. They can swallow fire, and right, they have these like mystic powers, right? They're not exactly under the influence of the mundane urges, but they're still in the relativity of the mundane plane, right? They have some position of mastership. So it's like, it's a temptation that can hook someone, right? And you can say, oh, they're free from the direct influence of Maya, but they're still in the relativity of Maya. They're still within the jurisdiction of Maya. And they're still assuming, and most important point, they're assuming a position of mastership independent of the Lord. There's no service connection there. And it's also not a permanent position. That's another point. It can only be temporary. Right? So we're told that this is like when a soul's on the way out, you know, oh, I'm becoming free from the material energy. Oh, well, what about this? What do you think about this? This is kind of interesting. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, I follow.
Anyone else want to add anything to that? And great to see everyone here. I see Giridhari Prabhu's joined us. Giridhari's turned his mic on.
Yeah, I have a question since you're mentioning Maya Devi, sort of. Yeah. I was thinking about it this morning, and is there any relationship between Yoga Maya and what is it? Yoga Maya and
Mahamaya?
Mahamaya.
Yes, it is true.
Like, do they have an interaction somehow?
You know, there's some mention, I believe in Navadvita Mahatmya. I'm trying to remember exactly. You know, we hear of different moods and like, you know, like sometimes we hear how Maya Devi is very ashamed of her position. Like, oh, I'm doing this dirty work, you know. I'm helping the souls who are averse to you, you know. Like, she feels ashamed to appear before the Lord. But then we hear there's mention, maybe it's in Navadvita Mahatmya, there's this reassurance given, like, oh, but I also have another aspect. She also has another aspect, you know, and you know, ultimately Radharani is the source of all, actually. Right? It is all the Shakti of the Lord, and ultimately Radharani, Yoga Maya, and that line, right? The source is there. You know? So whether or not they have a direct interaction, I cannot say, but that we definitely hear that mention, that her source is ultimately Yoga Maya. You know, that there is that higher aspect there. We do hear that. You know. So that's all I can say on that. But I believe in Navadvita Mahatmya and other places. There's some mention also of that. Yeah.
If you had to give a short definition to Yoga Maya, how would you word it?
Yoga Maya, short definition of Yoga Maya, we describe as the spiritual, sometimes rendered as the spiritual deluding potency of the Lord, right? So Mahamaya is the material deluding, material illusion. Yoga Maya is creating spiritual illusion. Or she's causing this forgetfulness, right? That this is the Supreme Lord, right? And Yoga Maya, she's also, I like to describe her as a stage manager of the Lord's Leela. She's orchestrating things. She knows what the Lord wants before he knows it, you know, and she's setting things up. She's arranging things, you know, so everything's like perfectly plotted out, right? Enter demon, you know, and all these things, and enter the helpless cowherd men and women, and enter the angry, arrogant God showering torrential rain. And enter Krishna, the hero, to save everyone, and all of this, right? It's all scripted. Yogamaya is scripting. She's the scripter. She's the writer. But more specifically, we normally will describe Yogamaya as the spiritual energy of the Lord that is causing this forgetfulness of the Lord's divinity, spiritual diluting potency, energy of the Lord, like that. And also see Scarlett is with us, Dana, Krishna and Johnny joined us. Great to see all of you here. Suvasini, Didi, anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't have anything really, no.
Mm-hmm. And Radhana Rupini saying Pratishta is so dangerous. Can't be attached. Wait, I think you mean it can be attached. Not following you.
We can't be attached to austerities or opulence.
Oh, okay. I'm with you. Yeah. That Pratishta can come as a result of this. Yeah, and in fact, that's why sometimes it's mentioned out of these two dangers, right? Bhukti and mukti. The spirit of enjoyment versus the spirit of renunciation. It's mentioned sometimes that the spirit of renunciation is more dangerous, right? Apparently, it's a very good place to be, right? Detached from the mundane energy, but it can actually be more dangerous. Why? Because as you're pointing out, the Pratishta is there, right? That ego, that arrogance, that pride is there. Oh, I have this power, right? I am renounced. There's some ego there, so it can be more dangerous. Whereas if you're just struggling with this with your senses like everyone else, it keeps you humble. Keeps you very humble.
You recently in one of the classes told the story of Govinda Maharaj, who told this one individual devotee to have a piece of chocolate. And that one, I felt when you said that he was breaking through that pratista,
Right. Yeah, Srila Govinda Maharaj, he was like that. He would give different instructions to different disciples, like one devotee, like with Akadashi, I think it was Akadashi, the example. Like generally he'd tell the devotees, don't take chocolate on Akadashi. It goes against the spirit of Akadashi. But this one, someone with quite a strong, like Brahmin, dealing with Brahmanism, the strong Brahmin, very attached to following Brahminical codes of behavior and attached to austerity and so on. Gurudev's telling him the opposite, forcing him to eat chocolate on Akadashi. Our Gurudev wasn't into like renunciation for the sake of renunciation. He wasn't into that. He was interested in service. He was interested in dedication. There was also in Navadvip, there was a whole group of devotees who used to follow very strict Akadashi observance, like full fast from water. And our Gurudev, he wasn't impressed by that. He was commenting on it once, and he didn't say anything exactly positive or negative, but he said his words were, "I am aloof from them." Like, they're doing their program, I'm aloof. Like they're doing their own thing, it's not my program. We're interested in service. We're interested. Krishna's only seeing that, He's not seeing, how renounced you are or how, materially attached you are. He's seeing how much love you have in your heart, how much desire to serve you have. That's what he's looking at. And our Gurudev, another comment he made in this regard, he said, I'm seeing that sometimes a very auspicious person may not get the result. And a very inauspicious person, they may get the result. Right? And then he said what we've just been saying, because a very auspicious person, they will have some pride. Oh, I'm so perfect and this and that. I'm chanting so many rounds and I'm so clean and perfect in my behavior and I'm following all the principles. But then the ego, right? And our Gurudev also used this analogy, I believe quoting Saraswati Thakur, one drop of cow's urine will spoil the whole pot of milk. Like you've just milked the cow, you've got a nice, beautiful bucket of pure, fresh milk. One drop of cow urine and the whole thing is spoiled. So Gurudev said the ego, the pride is like that. Like someone may have so many wonderful qualities, but then if they have some pride because of it, just spoils the whole thing. And sometimes we have an experience, right? Like we meet someone and we're very impressed, like, oh, they're so qualified with this and that. And then we see they're proud about it. Then it just suddenly the whole thing's ruined. It's no longer very attractive anymore, right? No, we experience that. You know? But then someone who's just, a fallen soul and struggling with their senses and struggling to follow the principles, they have some humility. Because of that. And humility is the first qualification. Of course, that shouldn't be an excuse to deliberately not follow the principles to keep ourselves humble. I do see that sometimes. I have had persons tell me that that's their strategy. Like literally. And I don't know what to say to that. I commend their sincere attempt to remain humble, but I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, I'm down at the bar, I gotta keep myself humble. I don't know what to say to that.
I have this idea. Yeah, I have this idea that you're saying this about the exalted devotees we read about in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? And they're dealing with Mahaprabhu, and I know they're on Nitya Siddha level, like they're perfected souls, right? So there's something different there. But also, you see that there's so many, like similar type qualities that they're having issues with. Like they're showing some pride, and they're showing some attachment, similar type of things that are going on in this environment. So I'm just thinking like, oh, that must be normal if you're actually a qualified devotee, that you have stains on your body that Krishna wants to keep there for various reasons.
Can you give some example? I'm not totally following you.
Well, I'm thinking Jagadananda is so furious about his emotions, about being attached to
Jagadananda
Mahaprabhu. Yeah, Jagadananda, where he brings the oil and he's furious and he's like not acting like a proper, like pious gentleman, you could say.
Right,
He's just emotional about his love for Chaitanya, which we know about that a little bit, right?
Right.
But I mean, in a similar vein, like we have so many emotions going on here under Mahamaya. And it just seems to me like all this whole strata of like whatever devotional level you have, like, yes, you are showing faults, at least externally, or maybe they are actually faults. So it's like a big secret because we can't recognize the Vaishnava. Yeah. Giving honor to everyone.
This is quite a fine point, and it takes some real Sukriti, some real spiritual merit to be able to understand these distinctions, right? Because we're entering the aprakrita plane, like it's the highest plane of the Lord's play, where everything starts to mirror the human-like behavior, the human behavior. The basis is totally different, but the appearance is the same. So yes, it's a very tricky thing,
Yes.
And I'm reminded of the case of Madhavendra Puri, right? Madhavendra Puri, we just went to his Bhajan Kutir in Govardhan on the banks of Govinda Kund. Dulal Prabhu will remember, and Nanda Krishna will remember, I hope. And there we hear this incident described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? How in his final days, in Madhavendra Puri, he's described as the Prem Ankur, as the sprout of divine love in this world. Now, why? Because he was the first person who revealed the particular mood of divine love that Mahaprabhu came to show in this world. It first appeared in a seed form, in a sprout form in Madhavendra Puri, this high Vrindavan mood of love, and particularly the mood of separation. And so in his last days, Madhavendra Puri showing this mood of, actually the mood of Radharani came through him. And there's this famous verse, Ayi dina dayar janata he, Maturanata Kadavalokshya se, Hridayam Twadaloka Katanam, Dayita Brahmyati Kim Garom Yaham. This mood of Radharani, like venting this mood of divine pain, of sorrow, of separation from Krishna, and this lamentation, oh, when will I see you again? Krishna, you've abandoned us. You've gone to Mathura now. You've forgotten about us lowly residents of Vrindavan. When will we see you again? And so in his last days, Madhavendra Puri is chanting this verse, Radharani's expression, and showing the sorrow. And it looks like some ordinary emotion, right? Like someone who's depressed, someone who's lamenting, someone under the influence of the mundane energy. And Madhavendra Puri has two disciples with him. One is Ishvara Puri, who's very blessed. He can understand the heart of his guru. He later becomes the Diksha Guru of Mahaprabhu, right? But the other disciple is Ramananda Puri. He cannot understand at all. And he's attached to generic conceptions of spirituality for the lower-minded person who cannot appreciate finer points, right? So Ramananda Puri, is it Ramananda Puri? Is that, no?
Paramananda Puri, is that Paramananda?
No, not Paramananda, not Ramananda either. What is it? Ramachandra Puri.
Ramachandra.
Yeah,
Ramachandra Puri, yeah.
Ramachandra Puri is his other disciple. And he cannot understand that this is a very high mood of devotion. He criticizes his guru. What is this? And this Bhagavad Gita verse is mentioned. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma na shochati na kankshati. Someone who's enlightened, they don't lament for anything. They don't hanker for anything. They're always in this peaceful, happy state of equilibrium, right? This is like very basic, generic understanding. And he can't understand that this is another plane. It's beyond the relativity of this mundane world. Okay, once you've transcended the Mayic flow, then you reach this kind of neutral plane of peace, equilibrium. But if you go higher, then you enter the world of divine rasa, divine sentiment, divine relationship with the Lord, where there's all these intense emotions and feelings, relationships, where the depth of divine love is being explored, right? And this is another thing, categorically different, but it appears the same. So it is a very tricky thing. It is a very tricky thing. And then where does that leave us, right? We don't want to imitate. That's where it leaves us. We don't want to imitate. We don't want to pretend that we have what we don't have. So we worship that. We worship that divine emotion. And we beware of any imitation. So yeah, it's a tricky thing, right? And this is why there's so much open field for the development of Sahajiism, this imitationism. mundane imitationism, because we hear, right, about these dealings of Jagadananda Pandit, Mahaprabhu, and then we can get into some funny places with all of that, you know. And we, you know, it all just becomes like a cartoon. It all becomes like a charming story. And that's why, like, yeah, we want to hear Leela, we want to hear the pastimes, but we also have to hear the ontology and the philosophy. You know, and then we see the approach of our gurus. Like, look at Chaitanya Charitamrita. Like, the Adi Leela is heavy going because it's all ontology, it's all philosophy. It's difficult to get through some parts of that. And then the Leela starts, then the charming, beautiful, happy pastimes start. But first, you got to get through all the heavy stuff, you know, like chapter 5 of the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the glories of Nityananda Ram. It's like there's so much technical detail there, and it's you know, very philosophical. Like, first, try to get grounded in that, you know, and then you can understand that it's all built on that. You know, that Nityananda who's rolling on the ground, riding on alligators, right? There are so many charming, cute pastimes we can tell, right? And Radha and Krishna with the gopis and da 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 da, right? You can get lost in all of that. You know, this imaginary world. But that's why we need to be grounded in the conception, understand the real approach to that plane, you know, through the lens of our guru's teaching, through the lens of our guru's appreciation. Then we're safe. You know, we're always worshiping the heart of our gurus. I was sharing with Ananda when we were in Navadvip. I had this realization one day that when we were in Navadvip, that like actually like the deepest approach we can make is that we're not actually able to worship, but we're worshiping the worshiper. That's what we're doing. We're not able to serve, but we're serving. We're attempting to serve those who serve. Like, it's always a few times removed. No. You know, it's like you know, we have this Arati song composed by our Gurudev for Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And I feel when I sing that song, actually I don't sing that song so much myself. I always feel unqualified. But when we do sing that song, it's Srila Govinda Maharaj's Arati song he composed. I feel more deeply connected to Srila Govinda Maharaj and Srila Sridhar Maharaj than the Arati song that we have for Srila Govinda Maharaj. Why? Because the Arati song for Srila Govinda Maharaj is composed by us, right? By our level. Like, we didn't have a Srila Govinda Maharaj who wrote an Arati song for Srila Govinda Maharaj. Like, it was composed by some of his disciples, right? But the Arati song written for Srila Sridhar Maharaj, like, that's like a real offering coming from the heart of a Param Vaishnava. Like, that's perfect. So it's like when we sing that Arati song of Srila Govinda Maharaj and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, we're worshiping Srila Govinda Maharaj's worship of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and that's a perfect thing. We don't have the capacity to offer proper worship. So we're worshiping the worship that's been done by the higher Vaishnava, you know. And like when we were just there in our Navadvip Mad, and you see the Samadhi Mandir, the temple for Srila Sridhar Maharaj that was designed by Srila Govinda Maharaj. It's so extraordinarily beautiful and perfect. You know, I was sharing with our devotees there. You know, there was this one family. It was a devotee and her parents. She brought her parents to India to visit the Math. And before they came, they did a bit of like a tourist thing around India, and they visited the Taj Mahal, right? Taj Mahal is like one of the, what is it, seven wonders of the world. And they came to the Math and they saw this Samadhi Mandir, and they said, this is so much more beautiful. really, it's so beautiful. If you look at how intricate the design is, and what's even more extraordinary, Srila Govinda Maharaj didn't make a whole constructural architectural plan. It was all inspired. Like day by day, he'd come out. I heard from devotees who witnessed it. He'd come out, he'd have the workers there, and he'd have his cane, and he'd be drawing in the soil, like showing the workers, now do this, now do this, now do that, put this here, put this there. Like every day it was some new revelation. Oh, this is how it's supposed to come out. He didn't have a big plan. That was how he did it. And he describes that on one occasion, like it's not my plan, it's not what I'm doing, but it's all coming from above. It's all revelation. So when we stand in front of that Samadhi Mandir, that temple for Srila Sridhar Maharaj, it's a monument. It's dedicated to Srila Sridhar Maharaj, but it's also a monument, embodying the perfect devotion of the perfect devotee. Like Srila Govinda Maharaj's devotion for his guru. It's like both of those things are there. The worship of the Srila Sridhar Maharaj and his glories, and the worship of the perfect disciple. Like we're worshiping both of those things there. So this is like the safe approach, right? That we're approaching the Lord and the higher devotees, through the lens of the devotion of superior devotees. Then that's something real, or more real than otherwise. Otherwise, it's so easy to get lost. It's so easy to get confused, like now we're in India, right? And we're coming across so many things. There's like a Hare Krishna Wonderland, Hare Krishna Disney Worlds, going on in different places. And you just see how easy it can be to get lost, confused. And but our gurus are giving us this line, a real approach. We want the real thing. We don't want to eat the mind's bananas, as Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada says. But we want the real thing. So. Anyone else want to share any comments on subject matter? We'll go on to another verse. Suvasini, do you want to lead us in the next verse? So going to verse 17.
Yes, yeah, sure. Verse 17. Ata thaish trividhai veshet leelam udvahataha kila yoga nidra bhagavati tasya shri iva sangata. Translation. Thereafter, that Supreme Personality of Godhead, having entered the universe in the guises of Vishnu, Brahma, and Shambhu, enacts his pastimes of sustenance, creation, and annihilation. These pastimes pertain to the mundane world. Thus, since they are of a lower order, the Lord remains aloof, consorting with his Yoga Nidra, who is an aspect of his divine potency in his inherent existence as Vishnu. She is the female embodiment of his trance of intrinsic divine ecstasy. Purport. As separated parts, Vibhinamsa, of the entity of the Lord, both Prajapati and Shambhu are within the purview of separate egoism, and thus each consort with their own alternate potencies in the forms of Savitri and Uma. Only Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the Lord of the divine or Chit potency, personified in the form of Rama or Shri.
So this Prajapati, that's another name for Lord Brahma. just in case it wasn't clear to anyone, the creator. And Shambhu is Shiva, of course, involved with destruction. And this Vibhinamsha we can perhaps clarify. So remember, so right, ultimately everything is coming from Krishna, right? But there's you know, there's degrees, there's gradation, there's more remote, more closely connected energies of the Lord. And so Amsha refers to a direct part of the Lord, and that's referring to his avatars, his expansions, and so on. And then Vibhinamsha means a separated part. So that's referring to the jiva. And so here, Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, they are being included in that. They're separated parts of the Lord. Whereas Lord Vishnu, he's a direct extension, expansion of the Lord. He's referred to as Amsha, right? Of course, Lord Shiva, he's a very mystical entity. You know, he's playing at every station. He's his own tattva. Lord Shiva's his own category. He's not classified as Jiva Tattva, actually, as you know, we are Jiva Tattva, right? And he's like a not exactly Vishnu Tattva, but linked there, you know, a special kind of branch of Vishnu Tattva. So Shiva's in his own category. But here we are referring to a lower aspect of Shiva, right? That's more involved in the material energy. So he's being referred to as Vibhinamsha, being classified with the Jiva section. So so this whole creation's going on. What's, you know, Vishnu doing? Mahavishnu, he's sleeping. He's completely aloof. All this madness going on down here, all the passion and the struggle and the so on, and he's in yoga nidra. He's resting. He's completely aloof to all of this. Does someone want to read the next one? Or Steve, do you want to have something to say?
Yeah, that's just like this really thick sentence that my mind is not wrapping around. That Lord remains aloof, as you said, but consorting with his yoga nidra, who is an aspect of his divine potency in his inherent existence as Vishnu. So he's Vishnu, he's like Vishnu as well as consorting with an aspect of this which is Vishnu.
So
And
this
then she's
so,
also yeah.
So, you know, Lakshmi Devi or Rama, she's being referred to as Rama Devi here in the purport, or Shri. These are all names for Lakshmi, Shri, Rama. So Lakshmi Devi is the consort of Lord Vishnu, right? And then this Yoga Nidra is an aspect of Lakshmi or Shri, you know, who is embodying this divine sleep potency. So when the Lord sleeps, he's actually engaging with this potency of his consort, you know, which is, you know, causing this divine rest. Does that clarify things?
But I mean, yes, but also there's the consort is an aspect of his potency. So I guess there's just some. I mean, the consort thing is if both aspects of Vishnu and aspects of Vishnu, then the consort just makes me like, is there like an aspect of Radharani that's in there somehow when that word consort is used?
Well, yes, that is true. You know, I mean, Vishnu. Okay, Marie, thank you for joining us. Great to have your presence. as always. Yes, the source is Radharani, right? So as Vishnu is coming from Krishna, so Lakshmi is coming from Radharani. That is true.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
That makes it all.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's also being indicated here in the purport here also. Vishnu is the Lord of the divine potency, personified as Rama or Sri Lakshmi. But yes, yeah, the source is Radharani. Okay. Does anyone want to read the next verse 18? And then we can maybe stop there. Any volunteers? Dulal Prabhu's volunteering? Or Giridhari Prabhu?
That's okay. Sikrikshayam tato nabes tasya padmam vinirayo tanalam hema nalinam ramano lokam adbhutam. Translation: when Garbhodaka Shai Vishnu desires to create the universe, a golden lotus flower appears from his navel. Situated on a stem, that lotus is Brahma Loka, or Satya Loka, the abode of Lord Brahma. Report. Here the word gold refers to Chittabhasa, the hazy aspect or reflection of divinity.
So we had this discussion in one of our last sessions, how there are these three Vishnus, right, who are the overseers of this whole mundane abode, right? And so there's Karuna Dakashai Vishnu, also known as Mahavishnu, just to make it more confusing, who's the main overseer of the whole mundane manifestation. He's the one who's floating in this causal ocean, Karana ocean, in this yoga nidra, this divine sleep trance. And from him, all these trillions and trillions of universes are coming out from his pores with every exhalation. And then he expands into so many Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. Garbhodakashaya is being mentioned here and enters individually into each and every universal system, right? And then he's resting at the bottom of each universal system. And then from his navel comes this lotus flower, and Lord Brahma, the first created being, he appears in that lotus flower. And then ultimately, we call Lord Brahma the creator, but it's more like an engineer, right? All the elements are there, created, and Lord Brahma is like the engineer putting everything together. And so this is the process that we're hearing about, right? Like before he starts putting everything together, what was his meditation? What was his darshan of the Lord at the beginning of time, you could say, from one perspective. At one beginning of time. And then what was his inspiration and what was his devotion? I mean, it's such a wonderful thing. That's what this book is, this chapter. We're told it was 100 chapters actually. And then this purport, this is beyond me. This is a very esoteric point. The gold is actually referring to this Chittabhas, the shadow of consciousness. So Sridhar Maharaj discusses this point to some extent in, I believe it's Subjective Evolution of Consciousness, how Chittabhas is this stage. Dulal was nodding his head. He remembers that, like this middle stage, like when pure consciousness is coming into the conception of matter. You know, this Chitta-bhas, like, wow, Kunti. Wow, Kunti, how exciting. This is our beloved sister Kunti in Texas, Austin.
Dhanyavad.
This is Ananda Krishna Prabhu, my dear brother, and Kanupriya Devi Dasi. What's the news, Kunti?
Just sowing seeds,
Oh,
beans and carrots today.
that's what it's all about. We're sowing seeds. Our Gurudev sowed the seeds, and we're trying to cultivate them. Hari Bol.
Evil.
Nice to see you, Bashaka. Dhanawad, I love you.
So Giri Harper, you're in Texas. Wow.
Yes.
Hi, that's exciting. I'm booking my ticket. Got Giri Hari there, Kunti there, Krishna.
Raja's coming in a
Raja's
week or
coming.
two, or soon, yeah.
Isn't here Chandra there too?
Yeah, and his wife too, I think, is coming tomorrow.
Wow, it's all happening in Texas. Wow, how wonderful. The Sangha's coming together. That's really wonderful news. Wonderful news. Right. Well, so yeah, there's this wonderful explanation given in Subjective Evolution about this Chitta-bhas. Literally, it means like boss is shadow, a boss. A boss is shadow, and this chit or chit is consciousness, right? So the shadow of consciousness, something like our mental plane. So yeah, I cannot say anything more than that. Some very esoteric points being made here. I don't know if anyone else wants to comment on that point. We're missing Jayadev today. Missing him. Does anyone have any news of Jayadev? Have to check in with him. All right, so just about come to the end of our meeting. Does anyone want to add any last words before we close for today? Savasini Didi, please share something.
No, I don't think I have much to say on these topics, really. It's so, so above my head. It's like, so. Anyway, I'm happy that, you're back and still being, able to, do this class in spite of, being tired from the trip and everything. You still, it's full of energy, so wonderful to hear.
In your association, Didi. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your wonderful company and giving us this impetus to dive into these holy scriptures, as is so much desired by our Gurudev, Srila Govinda Maharaj, and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Srila Swami Maharaj. All right. Jai Shri Brahma Samhita ki Jai, Jai Srila Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Srila Bhakti
Jai.
Sridhar Dev Goswami ki Jai,
Jai.
Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai, all these
Jai.
sincere seekers ki Jai. Shri Hari Ram Singh
Jai.
ki Jai. Jai Gaur Premanand.
Jai.
Shaka Didi ki
Hari
Jai.
Bol. Jai.
Ki Jai. Giri Jai Prabhu ki Jai. Navini ki Jai. See you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kunti, it's so good to see you. Are you still there? Your video went away. Oh, I don't see the video. Are you there, Kunti? It's not working.
Must have left. just
No, she's there. But it's not showing video.
The video is not on, yeah. It's not-
Yeah, I don't know what happened. Yeah.
Mm.
Anyway. Okay, I'll let you go, Didi.
No problem, no problem. Nice to see you anyway.
Yeah,
It's,
you too.
yeah. I'll be here next week, Didi, but after that, probably I will
Are you